This is TWiT.
Google, on the day before Apple's hardware announcement, announced its own hardware event. Yes, we have to wait until October 6th for that to happen, but still, we knew it existed before Apple's event actually happened. So, I don't know, they score like 2.5 points somehow.
Hell, it's the day after the show. Oh.
Yeah.
Thursday.
Yes, so this is Thursday, October 6th, the day after the show. So that means the event will happen, and then you all will have 6 days to prepare your arguments for or against.
And you 5.
Any of the hardware that is shown off at the event. And actually, Google is being pretty forthcoming. I mean, we kind of already knew what we're going to see at this hardware event. The Pixel 7, the Pixel 7 Pro, the Pixel Watch. All three of those devices we've seen already because Google did the thing where at Google I/O
They need a
May,
surprise. They need a surprise like, oh, I don't know, a new Pixel book. What do you think?
Who wants a Pixel book, Mr. Jarvis? Come on. Who wants one?
That would be a surprise. But you know what, Jeff? I think you're onto something. They do need a surprise because I was watching part of the Apple event today, and what did they call that bar in the Pro that expands, that had a catching name for it, and I think John might know.
The Dynamic
Something Island.
The
Something
Dynamic Island. So basically what Apple did is, you know in the top where there is like a cutout for the cameras, Apple essentially said, all right, many people see this as a limitation. It's a cutout. We're going to turn it into a new UI kind of paradigm for receiving notifications and information from apps. And so that little pill expands out and information appears there. It becomes this like living organism within the UI. And that was something that I don't know that we knew of ahead of the event. And what it made me realize is that like we go into these Google events, we know flipping everything about these phones by the time it happens. Apple somehow is able to hold on to some key pieces of information. Some of it gets leaked out, but some of it they hold on to for that true moment of surprise, and that's what really lacks from Google's hardware events. And I
will
wish that we had
continue
that.
to sing this song that I've sung for the last 3 years here. Google knows what they're doing. These leaks are not leaks, man. They're giving that information out to somebody somewhere and then claiming it's a so-called leak. This is happening way too often. Because if it was really
harder to
go ahead, Miss Stacey.
No, I think it's harder to terrify your partners when you're Google, and so these things do come out because people want to talk about them. I don't know if Google, I just don't think Google cares as much about leaks, whereas Apple, man, I feel like you're dragged to a basement somewhere and
but then also, but from a hardware standpoint, Apple has way more, cache or whatever versus Google.
It does.
So it seems like it only makes sense for Google to put as much information out as they possibly can to get some type of interest in it, because the average John or Jill on the street are more than likely looking for the next Samsung device versus the next Google device, let alone thinking about Apple devices out there, right?
Do you think the average John, if you're an Android buyer, you're either a super passionate Android buyer or you're buying a phone just because you can't afford or don't want, for whatever reason, to go Apple?
Yeah,
right. Is my take on that. So I don't know if you even care.
No, it's a religion.
Well, that's you're either in the religion, or you're just it's a phone that you can afford.
You're cheap.
I swear, I see more religious folks leaning towards the Samsung side of things though versus the Google side of things.
Yeah, a lot more Android energy from the everyday consumer going towards Samsung than going for Google. I mean, Samsung's also been doing this a lot longer than Google.
Oh
has.
Yeah.
But I do see more
retail chain.
Yeah, totally.
And they have legitimately better hardware.
There it is. Somebody said it.
Yeah, no.
I mean,
I think you're right. They've spent a lot of time refining how they create their phones, which is not to say that Google puts out bad hardware. It's just Samsung Yeah, they're just sharper on this stuff. I prefer the design language that Google does with the Pixels more, and I prefer the UI and the kind of the Pixel UI approach that Google does. But I can also admit that Samsung is at the top of the Android food chain for a reason. You know, I have I have family, I have friends who have Samsung devices, and they don't even think of checking out another phone. It's just because they're so used to the Samsung thing, and they hold on to their phones for a really long time. And Samsung devices kind of allow you to do that if you're buying of a certain level, a certain tier of Samsung phones.
How is the level of, I haven't touched one in ages, how is the level of Samsung software junk atop it?
I mean, that has definitely changed over the years. There's, I guess it depends on what you define as junk. I feel like it used to be that you got a Samsung phone and you got all sorts of other apps, be it from Samsung or not from Samsung, all of these like deals made, behind the scenes, cluttering up the phone. It felt like your apps tray was just being impacted by all these decisions that were made for you. And I think that that's lessened. It's still there, but Samsung, I think more so, has really leaned into the extra features and services that they offer. Samsung really wants to be an Apple, and I think they do a decent job of having that
I think they're getting pretty
ecosystem
close, right?
They're doing really well with that. But I think more and more I imagine Samsung has a picture of of Apple or an iPhone hanging on their walls like inspiration of like someday we're going to be like you. I think
that's fair because you can see the effort they put into this stuff. And again, I agree with you as far as like the Pixel experience with vanilla Android. But seems like Samsung has started to clean that up a little bit more. The few people that I know that are really passionate about Samsung, and every time I've seen their phones, it's definitely not what it used to be in the days of yore. For sure. And fragmented Android. And then the build quality of those phones are you pick them up, they're tanks.
Yeah, I was just the same word that came to my mind. Yeah, Samsung is of a certain tier, of a certain kind of category. They're built like tanks. Yeah. They're really well designed and well built. Do you love all the features? Do you even use or need all the features? No. I mean, some Samsung, dedicated people will get in there and use all of them. But, that's also part of Samsung's playbook is like we throw a million different features in here. You don't have to use them all, but you're going to find the handful of ones that really work for you. And that used to feel on older Samsung phones like, oh my God, stop it. Like, stop trying to make me believe that you are amazing and smart because of all of these things that you've done. And they still kind of push that on you a little bit when you first set up a Samsung phone, but then you get past that and you kind of settle into your use of it, and then you're kind of settle into finding the things that actually do work for you, and great. You don't have to use it all.
I remember a time when it was like the thing to have all of the cutesy stuff on phones and all of the different bubbles popping up and all of the weird sound effects every time you tap something. I wondered if that was something that the consumers really were digging for. And I'm sorry that you hear singing going on in the background, but we know why that is.
Sandy Cheeks?
Sorry about that. I should probably close my door. I told y'all this every daggum day, all daggum day.
That's awesome. I love it.
They're going to be going to Funny Girl on Broadway before you know it, Andrew.
Oh, man.
Bring her in. Put her on the mic.
Yeah. She's got a captive audience right now. Rehearsals begin. That's so amazing.
So sorry about that. I will close my door.
I love it. This is so cool. So let's see here. So we got the 7. Some news about the 7. Google actually confirmed that the next generation Tensor chip, not surprising, but the next generation Tensor chip is going to be on board. We really don't know what that even means, just that it will be.
Stay there for a second. Would you I was wondering today when Google v. Apple, and Google's has Tensor and has all this processing going on the phone to do things like translation and such. Does Apple have any equivalents to that kind of A, processing
Yeah, they have
power,
their
and B,
Bionic.
services. So compare the services.
Oh boy.
Well,
Yeah, I don't
So-
know that I have the answer to that because I'm relatively clueless on the Apple side of things. Do you know, Stacey?
well, I was gonna say it's hard to do an apples to apples. Okay, apples to apples.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's hard to benchmark them.
Rim shot.
It's
rim
hard
shot.
to avoid that. It's hard to, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Pineapples to
Because
pineapples.
yeah, oranges to oranges comparison because both of them are now designing their own chips. They're still using.
Yeah.
They're both ARM licenses, but that's one of the. I don't know if it's that tight integration between the hardware and the software. So, Apple is doing onboard device like machine learning type stuff. So they may not be doing it for real time translate, or that's not an advertised feature.
Well,
of
that's what
theirs,
I'm
but-
asking, Stacey. Is
So they're doing it
is
for
Google has
facial
all this
recognition.
Data. Okay. Where
so-
does Google have a strength in data in the data sets to enable the machine learning to happen on the phone? Where does Apple, if any, have any weakness there?
It's not a weakness there because what happens on your phone is actually there's two sides of machine learning. There's the training of something,
Right.
training something to recognize words and speech, and then there's the inference, which is running the noises my mouth makes against that particular algorithm, and then eliciting the translation. So the hardest part from a chip perspective is training, and that all happens right now in the cloud. So any advantage that Apple has or Google has, it's kind of obliviated. That is not a word.
Should be.
They don't have it. They don't have that because they're both doing things in the cloud, and then they stick that model. So whatever speech to text model they have, they're going to run it locally on the phone. So it's just running inference, which is still process intensive, but it's not like crazy like GPU level compute. So my hunch is they've tweaked their algorithms to work specifically with both of their chips. So it doesn't, and everyone has access to like the training data for speech, right? So where you would look for advantages, I'm trying to think, would be, I mean, even image recognition is just whatever training data you're using. Google has lots, but you can also buy access to it. Apple probably has lots they can get. I feel like Google gets it because, and I don't even know how much of this is actually true anymore. Google got a lot of it by like picking it up from its users, whereas
Right, that's my
Apple
point,
didn't
kind
pull
of.
that. Yeah,
Right.
so that's the actual data that they're going to create they're going to do the training on originally in the cloud.
Right.
But Apple can just throw money at that problem too.
Yeah.
So, in Apple's got the margins to do it. So maybe that's how they're doing it because their quality is not really suffering. I don't think. I mean, I know Siri is
think
not
so.
as awesome, but it's definitely gotten better.
Yeah. It
I don't.
has improved.
Someone who's doing like speech to text on an iPhone, are you seeing changes?
Yeah.
My husband does not seem unhappy, and he has an iPhone. He doesn't seem unhappy
Yeah,
with his iPhone.
we need
I
the
should say.
occasional Apple guest here to say, "How is it over there?"
Right. How you living over there?
Over there.
Like, that's a good idea. In fact, I've booked Leo for the show for next week. So, just solid. He'll get his Apple perspective next week.
Well
So,
played,
the show.
Mr. Producer. Well played.
Thank you. I try to stay on top of things around here. But yeah, I mean, that's, as far as the AI compute, all that kind of stuff, Google is and has been pretty known and, has proven itself to be pretty solid as far as that stuff is concerned. It's a good question. Where does Apple stand by comparison? Used to kind of be a standout thing for Google and for Android devices to have that, but has that gap narrowed? I still find myself, for right or wrong, I find myself still locked in the thinking that Google has a leg up there. But maybe that gap has really narrowed a lot. Either that, or maybe people don't care as much about it because Apple I think is doing all right, by comparison.
But they aren't. I mean, you can't do speech to text. I mean, real time translate on Google devices is pretty awesome.
It
Not
is.
that most
Yeah.
people need it, which is unfortunate. But like, I don't think Apple. I mean, someone in the comments just be like, Stacey, you and your blinkered Android worldview. But I don't think Apple has anything like that.
Right.
But I don't
That
think
live
that's
translate.
been a priority.
Well, yeah, is live translation from one language to another. I'm not saying it's not an important feature. It's very important. For the people who really need it, it's game-changing. But really, the majority of people probably don't have opportunities in their daily life to use something like that. So while it's a really great kind of example of Google's prowess in this aspect of what they do, it's, that's neat. I have no use for that unless I go traveling somewhere, maybe.
Yeah. Would you rather have privacy or real-time translation for like a week during your vacation?
Well,
right.
as Apple, wait a second, Stacey.
That's
That
a
goes
tough
out the
question.
window. Apple's going into the ad business. All that they used to talk about, that's going away. Apple's suddenly going to change its mind about privacy. I bet.
I'd be curious to see.
Say more, Jeff.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like your cynicism
know?
is like totally founded. Is that even?
Yeah,
a word?
well, because they're going in the ad. I mean, the whole background of Apple and privacy was Apple failed at the ad business, and so they turned a failure into a feature. Oh, that's not.
Oh,
bad,
that's
is it?
right. Yeah.
Failure into a feature. Oh, I like that. And so, we're the privacy company, which really meant we don't know anything about advertising. We failed at it. We don't really use the data in any way. So fine, you're better off with us. And now they are way going into the ad business, which means they are way going to need data. No two ways about it. And so I think that if we compare Apple statements of 2 years ago to 2 years hence, we're going to find a little hypocrisy, I'll bet. Just wager it.